Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing very well. Today we're in the F-16C and we're looking at using the airborne radar for BVR, beyond visual range, generally accepted as any range where the target is more than 10 nautical miles away. Generally speaking, the radar is split into two uses, BVR as we just described, and close range, usually be within 10 nautical miles, known as ACM. ACM will be in a separate video. The APG-68 is a planar array radar, capable obviously of BVR and ACM, search and acquisition and track, and it has slewable limits of left, right, up and down 60 degrees off bore sight. Now before we go into the technicalities of this radar and how to use it, I'm going to do a quick dummy section, just a few minutes now, to explain how radars work and how radar scan zones work. So if you're a noob, stick with this. If not, please skip to the next section that you can see in the video description. So this is an F-15 radar, but for all intents and purposes, they're all pretty much the same airborne radars. There is the address if you want to go and find this for yourself. We're going to go full screen. This is a top view. This is a side view. This is a kind of 3D view, and this is our B-scope. This is what we will see on our F-16C or something very close to it. So the actual scan zone is pretty much the same in all types of aircraft. This is our aircraft here. From a side view, you can see that it spreads out in terms of elevation, not very much. From the top view, it spreads out very wide, or it can spread out very wide like here. And from the 3D view, you can see what we're scanning is pretty much a slice of cake. I like to call it our scan slice of cake. We can only see aircraft, hostile or friends, that are in our slice of cake. So the skill of using a radar is to maneuver and manipulate and configure our radar scan zone so that it encompasses the enemies that we expect to see. On this example, red enemies are ones that cannot be seen by our scan zone. Yellow enemies are within our scan zone. This scan zone is very similar to what we'll find in our Viper. We've got 60 degrees left max slew, 60 degrees right max slew, and we've got an elevation here actually measured in bars. It's measured in bars because the way this radar actually works is in terms of elevation, it scans about 3 or 4 degrees. You know, if you imagine that these are degrees here, which is a bar, and it will scan that bar, say, to the left. Then it will go down another 3 to 4 degrees, which will be a scanning bar to the right. Then another 3 or 4 scanning bar to the left, right, left, right. The amount of bars that we've got here gives us the angle that we've got here in terms of elevation. The more bars, the larger the angle that we're scanning. The less bars, the lower the angle that we're scanning. We don't have the option to change the bars in this particular website, but it is something that we need to think about. So if we lower the amount of bars, this elevation will become thinner. It's very important to realize that maximizing the thickness of this here and this here is not always a good idea. The reason is that the radars in DCS are very realistic. The larger the size in terms of bars and azimuth we make these, the more time it takes for what we call a B-sweep to scan left, then scan right when it's moved down a bar, left when it's moved down a bar, and so on. So it's all about getting the right configuration of azimuth and bars to optimize our ability to find and track targets. Next, we'll go to our B-scope here. So what we can see on our B-scope is two enemies, that one there and that one there. We cannot see that guy there, or that guy there. If we wanted to see those red guys, we could cheat and look here, and we can see that we need to move our elevation up. That is our antenna elevation. We're going to do it in this case by pressing these two buttons here, and you can see that we're moving it up, and we can now see these guys here. But we can no longer see that guy, and that is all about how radar management works. If we want to see this guy, we can no longer see these guys. We've already got our maximum bars here, so we can't make this side elevation any thicker. Notice that we can also change the width of this here. We can change it down to, I believe that's 60 degrees total now. And we can move it left and right by moving this guy here, which is known as our target designator cursor or just cursor. And we will be able to do this with the F-16C as well. We can move it left, right, up and down. This, in terms of the B-scope, is range. Here is 0 range, here is 20 miles range, 40 miles range, 60 mile range, 80 miles range. We can change the range scale by zooming in and out, plus and minus in this case. You can see we've now got 40, 20, 10. This is not actually changing anything except what we see on this display on the B-scope, 160 and so on. We'll stick at 80 because that's what's set up for this little config here. So I'm going to go back to a full wide scan. So we can see everyone within this scan zone. So I'm going to optimize it to about there. Now, if we wanted to lock a target in what we call an STT, single target track, we could move our cursor over to a target. Let's say that guy there. And we could press the lock button, which in this case is what R. We can lock him. We're now sending our radar scan zone, basically the energy that our radar is sending and receiving, is just in a very small area, which is where this guy is. We are now tracking him. Once we've got a target tracked, we can then fire a missile. We cannot fire a missile while we are searching this full area. There are some small exceptions to that, and we will go through it, but we're just talking about generalities at the moment. So when I've got a single target track, like I've got here, our radar energy can no longer see these targets here. They've all gone red, and I'm blind to them. So that's all I want to show on this quick dummies guide. It's just to give you an idea of what the scan zone looks like, so you can start to really visualize it in your head, and roughly how the B-scope here translates to what we've got here, here, and here in the real world. If you want, come and play with this tutorial and you can get a better idea for yourself. Next, we'll head into the F-16 and see how it's similar, but also how it differs with extra functionality. So let's talk about, first of all, the scope of this video, because there's a lot of information I'm about to throw at you, and some disclaimers. So first of all, this is a very early access, October 2019. It's just been released. There are a lot of missing functions in this radar, so I'm just going to show what we've got at the moment. Next, we're only going to look at BVR, so we're not going to look at close range ACM, just BVR 10 miles and above. We're only going to look at the information, the radar within our MFD. We're not going to look at information within our HUD. We're going to examine the HUD symbology in the weapons videos, and we're not looking at any weapons today. It's just BVR radar, search and acquisition today. Next, there is currently no data link in the F-16, which will affect the radar. So data link we will do on a separate video. Finally, there is no IFF in the F-16 yet. That again affects our radar. So again, that will be added at another point with a different video. So we're focusing today on the air-to-air radar in BVR mode with our MFD only to keep the information concise. Okay, first thing, we need to start our radar up. Sensors control panel here. FCR, fire control radar on. That's our radar powered up. Next, we need to choose our MFD. We're going to use the left MFD because I'm left-handed and it just makes sense for me. So I'll go back to the main menu and fire control radar. Already you'll start to see things familiar from the generic example we saw a minute ago. Next, I'm going to show you F10 view. This is what's happening, and I'll link this mission so you guys can practice it. We've got our F-16 here and a whole bunch of all sorts of aircraft flying at us at different altitudes, different speeds, stuff like that. We've got our guy, so it's set standing still, so that we've got all the time in the world to do this example. So now we need to talk about some of the modes of this radar so it all makes sense. So first of all, we can split the air-to-air radar into two main modes. One, CRM, combined radar modes. This is for BVR only. Next, ACM, air combat mode. This is for close range only. So we're just looking at CRM today. Within CRM, there are two main sub-modes. One, RWS, range while search, and two, TWS, track while scan. Range while search is implemented, and we will look at that today. Track while scan is not here at the moment. It's something that will be added later on. RWS and TWS are two different methods for the radar to work in terms of search and acquisition. We're not going to cover them in detail today, what the differences are. We're just going to work with RWS. Within RWS, there are yet two more sub-modes. One, SAM, two, SCT. SAM, Situational Awareness Mode. This is known as bugging a target. This allows us to track a target as well as still being able to track other targets in the area. Second is Single Target Track, STT. This puts all of our energy, radar energy, into one single target, and it means that we can only see him and we cannot see any of the other targets in the area. With SAM, we can fire missiles, or at least we can fire AMRAAMs onto a target. With STT, we can fire AMRAAMs as well, and generally speaking, with other aircraft, STT also allows us to fire Fox 1 type weapons like Sparrows that we don't have in the Viper. There are advantages and disadvantages of each mode. The SAM is good because we can keep our situational awareness and see other targets, and also because it does not put too much energy towards the target that you are tracking. It will not give him a warning that your radar is tracking him. STT puts all of your energy into one target, so the hostile can tell that you are tracking him, so you're giving your game away essentially. But it has a benefit because we're expending more energy on tracking him. It's much harder for him to break a lock, as we'll probably see a bit later. Before we go any further, it's a good point to look at this switch here, the RF switch. This restricts which electromagnetic radiation can be sent out from our aircraft. In normal, anything can transmit. In quiet, only certain things can transmit. And you see it's in quiet, the radar is no longer working, it's no longer scanning. And if we go to silent, again, it's no longer scanning. So make sure your RF is to norm. That's a thing to check if your radar is not working. Next, we will look at the controls. There are quite a few to learn, so stand by. First of all, to slew our cursor around the B-scope, this is the B-scope, you know, that I'm framing here. We need to use radar cursor switch up, down, left, and right. If we want to slew our antenna elevation up and down, like we saw in the example before, we've got antenna elevation knob clockwise and counterclockwise. If you bind it to an axis, you can bind it to an axis, to a knob or something, but it bugs for me at the moment with my X56. It may or may not work for you, early access issues. To manipulate this screen, we have to ensure that it is SOI. So to ensure that it is SOI, we're going to use DMS down. To lock a target in SAM, situational awareness mode, we will use TMS up, and a double press of TMS will go from a SAM to an STT. To unlock a target, we can use TMS down. We don't believe this is working yet, but TMS left will give us expanded data on a target, but again, I think that's something for the future. So the first thing is to make it SOI. Now, it actually already is SOI here, so I'm just going to get rid of that. That is usually how it will come to you. So it does not have the red box around it, the white box around it, so it is not SOI, center of interest, so you cannot use it. So you must make it SOI. DMS aft. It's now SOI, it's now got the box around it. Now if we move the RDR cursor, you can see our cursor on the B-scope changes. Next, we need to go through the symbology of the B-scope. So, like we saw on the previous example, we are positioned here, looking that way. Range, 0, a quarter, half, 3/4, full. And that depends on our range scale here. So, if we were on 80, that's 80 miles, 60 miles, 40 miles, 20 miles. If we were on 10 miles, 10, 7.5, 5, 2.5, and so on. This is the bearing from bullseye to us. Do not listen to the flight manual. The flight manual says it's us to the bullseye. It is bullseye to us. This OSB here allows you to swap the fire control radar to the other screen. This is currently the fire control radar. If we press that, we go back to the main menu. This allows us to select the test screen. This allows the DTE screen. This is a declutter function. Cont, currently not available. Control, currently not available. We think it's going to be a screen with extra options for the radar, currently not there. Override will take us back to a basic standby screen, currently not there. Norm, currently not implemented. This is an important one. This allows us to change through the sub-menus of CRM. So remember, CRM has two sub-options of range roll scan or track roll scan. If we want to change to track roll scan, we'll press that there. Currently not implemented, we know, but just bear in mind that's where it is. If we want to change from CRM to ACM, then we can press CRM and change to ACM here if we want. Another way to do it is through the dogfight switches, but that's something for the weapons videos. So we're going to stick on CRM or BVR, that can otherwise be known as. Range scale I've already shown you, it's in nautical miles and fixed to the top there. Next is the azimuth. So currently azimuth is 6. This is the width of the slice of cake, the width of the scan zone. That means 60 degrees to the left, 60 degrees to the right. If we now go to A3, it's now 30 degrees to the left, 30 degrees to the right, total 60 degrees. The limits are shown by that line there and that line there. Now if I were to move my cursor off the edge, you can see it follows where I go to the max limits of the radar. The bump stops, they're called, 60 here, 60 degrees there. If we want to go again, we can go to 10 degrees, 20 degrees total. And you can see we can move left and we can move right all the way to the bump stops. Let's put it back on 60. At this point you might think, well, why would you not always have it on full width? Well, the reason is because the refresh rate with the B sweep, that is the B sweep at the bottom there, going right and left and right and left. Remember, every time it hits the bump stop, it goes down a notch. Hits the bump stop, goes down a notch in terms of elevation until it's finished its elevation bars. The wider you scan and the more bars you have, the bigger your refresh rate is, the harder it is to keep contacts on screen. And it is an absolute art form to keep contacts on screen and balance your situational awareness with your ability to see and track targets. So that's azimuth. Now we have our elevation, the thickness of our slice of cake. How many bars do we want it? Remember, each bar is about, it depends on different radars. They're usually about 3 to 5 degrees. We've got 4 bars at the moment, so that means 4 bounces between bump stops, 4 B sweeps before it resets. We can have 1, we can have 2. So this will give us the maximum size elevation, this will give us the smallest size, this will give them the medium size. But the bigger the size is, the lower the refresh rate, the harder it is going to be to lock, track, acquire and keep a track of these targets. Okay, M3 doesn't do anything at the moment. So next we've got our carrots. We've got our azimuth carrot, or our B sweep, that's this guy here. That is where the antenna is pointing. 60 degrees left, 60 degrees right is where the bump stops are. This is our elevation, so that you can see it will go down in 4 bars, then back up to the top. And this radar can handle 60 degrees left, 60 degrees right, 60 degrees up, 60 degrees down. So this is 0 degrees azimuth, this is 0 degrees elevation. That is up there somewhere, 60 degrees up, 60 degrees down. If we want to change our antenna elevation, then I'm going to press the button and we can move it up here like that. And down, want to move it down, whoops, wrong button, we can move it down there like that. Look how, if I aim it down, these contacts disappear. These contacts have disappeared. They're now fading. And that's because my slice of cake is aimed too far down and it's below them. If I want to regain them, because I know they're roughly co-altitude, then I move to the middle and we'll start picking them up after a couple of sweeps. Okay. Now, I know what you're thinking. I can know what angle this elevation is set to, but in real terms, what actual altitude is that set to? And that's where these 2 numbers here, you'll be using these 2 all the time. Note that wherever I move this cursor, these 2 numbers change. You will always be looking at them. What they are saying is, at the range that I've got this cursor set, which currently is 40 miles. Remember, we're on 80 miles there, so 80 miles there, 0 miles there, 40 miles there. At 40 miles, if I drew a plumb line, that is a vertical up to down line, through our slice of cake, our scan zone, at 40 miles distant from me, it would intersect, that plumb line would intercept the top of the scan zone at 54,000 feet ASL, and at the bottom minus 5,000 feet ASL theoretical. Now if I move my elevation down, I'm going to press the elevation down button. Whoops, wrong way. It's now intersecting at 40 miles minus 25,000 and minus 88,000 feet theoretical. If I were to move it up, 99,000, we've got off the top, we've gone into space basically. So at that certain range, note that if I moved it closer, the numbers will change because it's drawing the plumb line at a different range. Very important that you understand that. Without understanding that relationship of these numbers to the elevation of our radar antenna, then you'll basically never be able to do anything. The next icon I see is this guy here. Here's a steer point. We've currently got steer point 1 selected. That is our steer point there. This gives you a bit more situational awareness about where your steer point is and where the air-to-air contacts are, where the airborne contacts are. Now, the way I would do this is I would actually be heads down and I would drive the radar from here until I was in a position where I'd locked a target and I was ready to fire at him and whatnot. So next we need to look at going from search, because everything we've done so far is search, to acquisition, to track. If we ever want to fire a missile at something, or we want to inquire more information about something, then we're going to have to start looking at acquisition. So, and this is where it starts getting a little bit frustrating for pilots, inexperienced pilots, because we have to understand some basics. So I'm going to move my cursor over one of these contacts. The contacts are the squares, obviously. I don't really need to explain that. And obviously their range is based on the range from here. Azimuth is based on the azimuth from here. All obvious, simple stuff. So I'm moving it to that guy there. We can see, I know he's within my elevation parameters because I can see him. I'm now going to press TMS up once to bug him. I've now got him bugged. This was, if you remember, the SAM mode, the situational awareness mode. We are now tracking him and we can inquire information about him. Our radar is now set between that line there and that line there. I think it's 20 degrees left to right, but I may be wrong. And look how everything else has disappeared outside of the 20 degrees. It's still called SAM, situational awareness, because we can still track hostiles like this one here while they are within these limits. So we can now find with this his direction, his azimuth. We can find that he's heading away from us on that bearing there. This guy is coming within our limits, radar limits, so we can see him, we can see him. We can see his altitude, Angel 16,000 feet. We also get his credentials up here, information up here, but it will not work if I'm in active pause mode, just how the game works. So I'm going to unpause now. We should get some more realistic data here. Pause. I'm actually just going to TMS back here, TMS aft to disconnect from him, and then I am going to re-establish contact with him with TMS forward. Got him again. Okay, I'm going to pause there. It's very hard to do this and to get time to speak to you. Right, so I'm not active pause anymore. I'm what we call full pause. Here we see the hostile's airspeed. He's currently at a calibrated airspeed of 400. Here is the closure rate between myself and the hostile. Currently the closure rate is 91 knots. So that means if we're closing, that means and he's heading away, I'm going 91 knots faster than him. That is our combined closure rate. This is the direction that he's traveling from north, if that's the best way to explain it. So if he were heading north, exactly, he would be heading at 360 or maybe 0. But he's heading at 300 currently, and as I unpause, it may change because I think it's turning. Also, there's his aspect, which is even more important. This is relative to us. So if we're following him here, if he's at an aspect of 0, I think it is, he'll be heading directly away from us. He's currently an aspect of 34. That means he's turned 34 degrees right from 0. I'm going to try unpausing here, and let's see if we can change. You see he's now at 310 bearing. And that's relative to him only, not to me. You can see he's at 3-1 now. My apologies, I made a mistake there. That is as we described it, so he's heading nearly north now. That there is actually in tens. And yes, 0 would be away from us, so that would be 0 or 36 or 360. He's now heading at 2.9, which basically means 290, which is that angle there. Relevant to us. So this is relevant to us, this is relevant to magnetic north. If he was heading at 180, aspect, it would be down towards me, and if it was 9, it would be 180. If it was 9, it would be 90 degrees. That would be off to there. So I hope that makes a bit more sense. So it's telling us his aspect relevant to us in tens of degrees. We can watch him a little bit further just to confirm that. Note that when we use our SAM lock, which we're doing at the moment, we're going to use 4 bar here, and yes, that is 20 degrees overall scan. You see, it's turning right. So that aspect will keep decreasing. This one will keep increasing. So he's gone over north, and now he's heading right of north, and this is decreasing. 27 heading directly right at 90 degrees from us at 270. Note the closing speed's gone up to 439 knots because he's now essentially not getting away from us. He's traveling, flanking to the right, and we are heading directly towards him. And if there are any radar noobs at this point, I should say there are other things that get in the way of these kind of tracks. Often, the reason we're finding it very easy to track these guys, we're not losing track and stuff like that, is that they're great big jumbo jets or Aleutians. There's something massive, because I wanted this video to be easy and simple. What you'll find is that when you get out there in multiplayer servers and trying to track small targets at long distances like this guy is, 60 miles, something like that. With fast-moving fighters, you will lose track a lot or won't be able to gain track. And that's because in certain aspects, at certain speeds, at certain ranges, at certain altitudes, radars don't work very well. If this was a small fighter, we probably wouldn't be able to lock him because he is what we call notching or flanking, which means we're firing our radiation at his side, and we would probably lose the lock. There's a hell of a lot to learn. Like I said, radars are an art form. You would need a 10-hour video to really understand radars properly, but we're not going to go any more into it than explaining that that is a thing. Okay, so that is our SAM lock investigated. Now we need to do our STT, our single target track. So what we're going to do is press TMS up again. Now the only conflict I might see is that this guy is quite close and it may accidentally get him, but let's try. So we're going to try TMS up or short again. So we're going to unpause. I'll pause it here because to do these locks we can't be an active pause, it upsets it. So we're now in an STT lock, single target track. It means that all of our energy is focused on him, nothing else can be seen. So we've been over the advantages and disadvantages already. What we can see is pretty much the same in terms of, we can see his altitude, we can see his aspect here, we can see his, if you like, his magnetic heading there. We can see that he's aspect 270 from us. His speed is still 400 knots. I think that's CAS. Our closing speed is 491. And because everything else has disappeared, we can tell that we're in STT. Other ways that we can see that we're in STT is that we're not doing any type of scan now. This azimuth carrot is going to be locked onto the target. It's not going to be buzzing left and right anymore. This elevation, I think, is probably going to be locked as well. So everything's locked on this guy, which is pretty cool to see. If I unpause now, see, everything's locked in place. Wherever he goes, my radar antenna will follow him now within the slewable 60-degree limits. And that is now, look at our closure rate there. I'm going to pause it again because I'm probably going to crash into the ground. So we're getting to the end of the video now. We've shown the two different types of sublock that we can do within RWS, within CRM. I'll just show using it a bit more, shall I? I'll show using it in a more dynamic scenario so I can see up here. Note there is HUD symbology regarding this, but we're going to cover that in the weapons videos. If we unpause, we can now head towards the target. You can see that I've got our horizon line shown there to keep our situational awareness. That's the reason why we can kind of zoom in like that and keep ourselves safe. What we'll do is unlock. Let's just pretend he's broken the lock. So TMS aft. And we're now back in. That goes back to situational awareness mode. So we're now tracking with situational awareness mode. I want to go back again to RWS. That's RWS now with TWS aft. TMS aft. So many acronyms. It's hard to follow. I'm going to find another guy now. So I'm going to find, I don't know, who do I like the look of? Stand by. I like the look of that guy there. TMS up twice. 1, 2. That's put him in STT. And we'll fly towards him now in STT, shall we? And there's one more thing I'd like to show. And I'm actually going to test if this works or not at the moment. And that is our NCTR, our non-cooperative. Oh, I've forgotten it. I'll see. What is it?
Non-cooperative target recognition.
Target recognition. Right, that's something. We're not sure if it works or not. We'll try it for the first time here. We're going to head towards the target lockbox there. The range is on fire. He's below 40 miles. I'm going to zoom in here. Oh, it automatically zooms in when the guy gets close in STT, I should say. One thing I want to try is automatic NCTR. That means our radar will automatically, assume it's turned on, NCTR is turned on. We'll look into his intakes and other recognizable parts of his aircraft and try and recognize what that type of aircraft is. If it understands what that type of aircraft is compared to its memory banks, it will tell us up near the top what kind of aircraft that is. We're not sure if it's working or not, but we're going to give it a go. We need to get a little bit closer. It's 25 miles now. Does he turn? Which way is he going? He's still coming to... Oh no, he's turning away now. I'm going to have to go burners on. I just want to see if I get this NCTR print. Nothing obvious at the moment. What will happen is if it detects who he is, what type of aircraft it is, it will print it out for us here. You can see his aspect is now 140 degrees to the left. So again, remember that 180 is down here, so 140 is there, 90 is there, 40 is there, 0, 270. It takes a while to get your head around it. And he's coming back at us. We might be able to get this NCTR print almost head on. If that goes to 1.8, then he's head on with us. 7 miles, 6 miles, doesn't look like we're going to get the NCTR print. It may be because his aspect is sideways. NCTR sometimes only works if you are more or less head on or more or less aft, and I don't think we're going to get it. It's just something I wanted to try live. Okay, we're not sure yet whether NCTR works, but I've explained what it is and how it should automatically work for you. I hope that was useful. That was the scope of our video on screen, BVR radar, the types of locks and everything we've got at the moment.